Biden strolls the beach while American hostages languish. President keeps light schedule amid world chaos. Last Friday, President Biden had one event on his schedule, a noon welcoming of the presidents of the European Council and European Commission. At 4 p.m. that day, Mr. Biden headed to a lavish campaign reception in Washington. Then he and First Lady Jill Biden bolted to their oceanfront mansion in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, at 7:30 p.m. Over the weekend, the pair did a photo op walking along the surf. On Monday, Mr. Biden headed back to the White House. At 11:45 a.m., try doing that at your job. At 2:15 p.m., the president held an event to highlight how Bidenomics is growing the economy from the middle out and bottom up in every region of the country. Asked by a reporter about American hostages in Gaza, the president said, we should have a ceasefire, not a ceasefire, we should have those hostages released, and then we can talk. Okay. That was it for the day. Erase the rest of the president's schedule for the week. Tuesday, award the National Medal of Science and the National Medal of Technology and Innovation. Wednesday, host the Australian Prime Minister and his wife, along with a few hundred guests, at an expensive White House state dinner. Enjoy, you paid for it. Thursday, no events. Friday, another lavish campaign reception, then off to his other mansion, this one in Wilmington, Delaware. That's it. That's the president's week. If history is any guide, he won't return to the White House until midday Monday. Now, for an 80-year-old man, you might say that's a lot. But he's President of the United States. 20 or more Americans are being held hostage by Hamas in Gaza, 17 days after the terrorist group slaughtered hundreds in Israel, and Mr. Biden is strolling the beach. Mr. Biden's lack of interest in those hostages drew scorn across the culture over the weekend, eventually even pulling in 50 Cent. Hey Joe, get the F up, we in trouble man. The rapper wrote on Instagram over the weekend with a screenshot from an article headlined, Biden hits the beach with Middle East, Congress in chaos, which featured a picture of Mr. Biden lounging in a recliner. We got some real S going on out here, Joe. What's the plan, to get a tan and chill? Come on now, 50 Cent wrote. White House Deputy Spokesperson Andrew Bates pushed back against criticism on social media, saying, as has been the case for the better part of a century, presidents can execute the full range of their duties from anywhere in the world, whether it's a war zone in Israel or 100 miles from the White House in Delaware. But erase the problem, the optics are terrible. Mr. Biden shuffling along the beach like he doesn't have a care in the world is not the image Mr. Biden should be showing Americans, especially the families of those held hostage. Nor should he be projecting that to the world, especially not the imams of Iran, who consider Mr. Biden the weakest of presidents. Mr. Biden has coasted from the beginning. During the 2020 campaign, when the U.S. was in the throes of COVID-19, Mr. Biden hardly hit the road, instead hiding in his basement. Since then, he's kept the lightest of schedules week after week, and nearly every week, he's off for a mini vacation. Slacker-in-chief Biden keeps up record 40% vacation pace despite disasters, the New York Post reported last month. Biden has spent all or part of 382 of his presidency's 957 days, or 40%, on personal overnight trips away from the White House, putting him on pace to become America's most idle commander-in-chief, the Post wrote. Some are unhappy with that paltry schedule. We have millions of illegal immigrants pouring across our borders. Violent crime is surging. Inflation is crushing hardworking Americans. Our enemies around the world are emboldened, Representative Elise Stefanik, New York Republican, told the Post. Meanwhile, Joe Biden is filmed on the beach with his handlers preventing him from speaking to the media to answer basic questions Americans deserve answers to. And that was before we had Americans taken hostage and the whole Middle East on the brink of starting World War III. Sure, you could make the argument that everyone deserves a little time off. But no, wrong. The president deserves no time off. No one made him take the job. In fact, he spent 2 years and $1 billion campaigning to get it. So get to work. If you can't do the job, make way. Someone else is ready, willing, and able to be president. And come November 2024, someone else will be elected to do the job. Guaranteed. Biden strolls the beach while American hostages languish. President keeps light schedule amid world chaos. Last Friday, President Biden had one event on his schedule, a noon welcoming of the presidents of the European Council and European Commission. At 4 p.m. that day, Mr. Biden headed to a lavish campaign reception in Washington. Then he and First Lady Jill Biden bolted to their oceanfront mansion in. The incoherence of Pope Francis. The Vatican offers confusion instead of clarity in Gaza, Ukraine, and China. Pope Francis called President Biden on Sunday to talk about Gaza. The papal phone call came amid Israel's public criticism of the Vatican's tendency to treat the Israel Defense Forces as morally equivalent to the Hamas terrorists who targeted, attacked, and butchered unarmed Israeli civilians. Israel's irritation was kicked off by a joint statement on October 7, the day of the Hamas attack, from the patriarchs and heads of churches in Jerusalem. This is an ecumenical Christian group that includes the Catholic Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem. The leaders did unequivocally condemn acts that target civilians. But the statement didn't name Hamas, and it called for the cessation of all violent and military activities that bring harm to both Palestinian and Israeli civilians. The Israeli embassy to the Holy See said the statement reflected an immoral linguistic ambiguity. From reading it, the embassy response said, "There is no way to understand what happened, who were the aggressors and who the victims." Pope Francis has since affirmed the right of Israelis to defend themselves and called for the release of Israeli hostages. But a week later, the patriarchs and church leaders issued a second statement, and the Pope followed with an address calling for humanitarian law to be respected in Gaza. Israelis took these as shots directed at them. For missing from the Pope's remarks was any appreciation that Israeli forces will invade Gaza to ensure that Hamas can never pull off such a barbarous attack on their people again. Likewise missing is an acknowledgement that Hamas bears primary moral responsibility for any civilian deaths from Israel's military entry into Gaza because Hamas deliberately hides among the Palestinian population, using them as human shields. Israeli Foreign Affairs Minister Eli Cohen made clear what Israel wants from the Vatican, an unequivocal and clear condemnation of the murderous terrorist acts perpetrated by Hamas terrorists that caused grievous harm to children, women, and the elderly just because they are Jews and Israelis. Vatican incoherence is also sowing confusion in Ukraine. As with Gaza, the Pope's insistence on defining the problem as war itself, not Vladimir Putin's unjustified invasion of a neighbor, also suggests moral equivalence. So even though he has talked about a right of nations to defend themselves and referred to martyred Ukraine, these get swallowed up by his both sides approach on war. In August, Ukrainians were horrified when the Pope, via video, told young Russian Catholics gathered in St. Petersburg that they are heirs to the great, enlightened Russian Empire as embodied by Peter the Great and Catherine the Great. As Ukrainians well know, and the Pope should have known, Mr. Putin has invoked this legacy to justify his invasion of their homeland. The Pope later had to clarify that he wasn't endorsing Russian imperialism. But the damage was done. Sviatoslav Shevchuk, head of Ukraine's Greek Catholic Church, said the Pope's words were painful and difficult for the Ukrainian people, who are currently bleeding in the struggle for their dignity and independence. Finally, there is China. Unlike in Israel and Ukraine, there is no war in China, but an invasion of Taiwan can't be ruled out. Yet the Vatican has been largely silent on Beijing's outrages, including the genocide of the Uyghurs.